What's going on, YouTube? Um, well, it was an entertaining finish to the game, but you know, yet again, the Eagles come up just short. First of all, I completely agree with the decision to go for two there. I mean, the season's over anyhow. You might as well, go for it in that situation instead of tying the game and hoping that things can go your way in overtime, where it's been a season where, for the most part, things haven't gone their way. Besides the 3-0 start. So I don't blame Doug Peterson at all for going for it there. I mean, you know what? I mean, you know, um, you go for the win there. You definitely do. It's not like when Tennessee earlier in the day they go for two when there's still 3 minutes and some change to go instead of tying it. I mean, you can argue that both ways too, but in this situation, I mean, you're a team that hasn't won a game in a while, and you have a shot at a win, a game no one expected you to win anyhow. Injuries, everything. You go for it, and I agree with the call. They didn't get it. I mean, you can kind of argue the play call there. I mean, maybe they could have ran the ball, because today the run was a lot more effective than the pass. But then again, I mean, you're hoping to push it in. I mean, I know the Eagles' offensive line. I mean, maybe the Ravens, they see you in a run formation and they're stacking it up, and you have to get it. I mean, it's not like it's a third or fourth and inches situation. It's you know a situation where you're going for 2 points. It is what it is. But I know some people, some of the Eagle fans out there, are like, oh, why didn't they just tie the game, go to overtime? I mean, if this game was for the playoffs, I can kind of see that you would do that and play for overtime and take your chances there. But I mean, you really don't have anything to play for at this point besides pride. And at that point, yeah, you go for the win. You're on the road. Again, no one's expecting you to win. Just go for it. But it didn't. It didn't happen. Uh, and it's another loss in the column there, and they're now 5-9, and more than likely, things aren't going to go well the next couple games either. But it's about seeing, again, like I said a week ago, who's going to be here, who's going to be part of this, turnaround of this rebuild. I mean, who should be here? You asked me, both corners shouldn't be here. My God, I mean, the end of that first half, I don't know. All it is Steve Smith. You let him get behind you. I mean, he's only done that for his whole career. You might want to, understand, well, maybe he's going to do that. Maybe you want to cover that a little better, but I don't know. I mean, saying that, look, this team, I think, going into this game was second to last in sacks on the season. And, going into this season, myself included, all of us figured that one of the strengths of this team was going to be the defensive line, and it just hasn't been. I think Brandon Graham's had a tremendous season. I think he deserves a lot of credit. I mean, today we had a Vinny Curry sighting. I mean, nice of him to show up finally for a game. Connor Barwin, I mean, he's a veteran. He's giving you what he can, but I mean, he's got a lot of tread on those tires, as the saying would go. They just don't have a great pass rush. The middle, I mean, Fletcher Cox, Benny Logan. I think at times they've done well against the run, but just not getting enough pressure on the quarterback. And I do think it's kind of unfair, for us to look at what Fletcher Cox has been this season and say, well, he's not getting sacks, even though he had some sacks last season as a tackle. You're generally not going to get a lot of sacks. I mean, there are some out there who do, like a Ndamukong Suh and whatnot, but generally tackles just are not big time sack artists. And it's just the nature of the position. I mean, you're in there to be kind of a plugger, stop the run, put pressure on the quarterback. But most of the time, the ones that get the sacks are going to be defensive ends, are going to be linebackers, are going to be even secondary, more so than the defensive tackles. That just doesn't go with that position very often. There are some that are exceptions to the rule. But normally they're not going to be big time sack guys. And I know Fletcher Cox kind of spoiled us last year. He had a good season with sacks, but that's generally not going to be that position strength. Um, and it is what it is. But still, I mean, it's not excuses. I mean, he certainly should have played better this season. Whoever was next to him, whether it's Benny Logan or Bo Allen, whoever's in there with the rotation or due to injury, I mean, they all, to a man, have to, admit they got to play better. And one of the big problems for this team this season has been their defense. Much too often, the opposing team is making big plays on it. Much too often, they're converting on third downs. And I know that the secondary, the corners in particular, just are not good enough. But at the same time, you're just not getting enough pressure on the opposing quarterback with your defensive line, with your linebackers, and that's got to get better. You look at the teams that have success in this league. Look, you build a team, and yes, you have to have the franchise quarterback and playmakers, but you build a team with an offensive line and a defensive line, and then you go from there. And for the next few seasons, that's something that I'd like to see the Eagles do. I'd like to see them build a dominant offensive line. I'd like to see them build a dominant defensive line. Because if you can have those two, you're going to have a lot of success. Even if you have one of those two, you're going to have a lot of success. I mean, I look at the Seahawks, and everyone talks about the Legion of Boom. Everybody talks about that's the strength of that defense. When in reality, look, they're great. I mean, they got some future Hall of Famers in that secondary. They're tremendous. I'm not taking anything away from them. But what makes them so good, what makes their job easier, is the fact, particularly, some years ago, the Seahawks, they were getting, that defensive line was so dominant. Their linebackers, I mean, Bobby Wagner is one of the best linebackers in the league, and it makes it that much more easier for a secondary to do their job. If your front is getting pressure on the opposing quarterback, a lot of secondaries are going to have success. And again, it's not taking anything away from the Legion of Boom. They're tremendous. Two of the all-time best safeties ever to play and one of the all-time best corners ever to play. But honestly, if you're not getting that pressure, and we see them at times, when they lose games, it's because that secondary is asked to do way too much. And they can get exposed. Even as great as they are, they can get exposed. But this, it's the same for any secondary, but the Eagles secondary, the problem is it's not just the fact that they're not getting the pressure up front. They're just not good enough. I mean, I kind of question that they're NFL cornerbacks. I really do. I mean, sometimes you watch them and they don't turn the head. They don't look for the ball. They don't try to play the ball. It's embarrassing. I mean, it's embarrassing. And I mean, Jalen Mills, he's young. I mean, he's a rookie. We'll see what he brings next season. He's not a, one or two corner in this league. Even going forward, I would imagine he won't be a one or two corner in this league. They need to get better corners. They need to get better. They need to get better on the defensive line. They need a pass rusher aside from Brandon Graham on the other side of him. They need, more. And the problem is they put a lot of money on that defensive line this offseason. They paid Fletcher Cox. They paid Vinny Curry, and they paid Brandon Graham. Now, Brandon Graham, of all of them, is the one that's had the best year. Maybe this defense best suits him. I mean, he even said that before the season. He was looking forward to playing in this defense because he feels it best suits him. I mean, he showed it. He's had an all-pro type of season, and credit to him. I mean, I know a lot of Eagle fans, myself included, were still lamenting the fact they didn't take Earl Thomas that year and took Brandon Graham. Well, Brandon Graham's starting to figure it out, and good for him. I mean, he's taking his lumps. He's always been compared to why did they draft him instead of Earl Thomas? I still draft Earl Thomas, though. But particularly that was the offseason that they let Brian Dawkins go, and you don't draft Earl Thomas. Okay? But anyhow, I digress from that. The fact of the matter is, he's had a really good year, and we gotta give credit where it's due. I know it's been a horrible year again. 5-9, just after a 3-0 start, and maybe we were fooled by that 3-0 start, but it's been a really disappointing season the rest of the way. But Brandon Graham's played well, and if he makes an All-Pro team, well deserved. He's played really well. He's been one of the top pass rushers in the league this season. and he's brought it every week. You can't blame him for their misfortunes on defense this season. He's played well. I think Jordan Hicks at times has played well. At times he's shown that he's a young linebacker in the league. Today he gets a big interception that really kind of turned the momentum in that game. Um, I mean, look, the Eagles had a shot. I mean, you gotta give credit. I mean, Carson Wentz. I know, people kind of still have questions as far as do we really know what Carson Wentz is? And I don't think I've said this before. I really don't know. And I don't know if it's fair to the guy or not because he doesn't have the greatest offensive line in front of him. There's been a lot of injuries there. Not a great receiving core. Not even a now. Here's the funny thing. All these weeks we've been saying the Eagles don't even try to run the ball, and I've said this before. I said this offensive line, even with the injuries, they can be a good run blocking type of offensive line, but you wouldn't know it because they don't try to run the ball. Well, today, ironically, they're going up against the number one rush defense in the league in their house, and they're running all over them. I mean, the Eagles certainly had a lot of success today running the ball. And you know what? Going forward, I hope they see that. I hope to see this more. The problem is they ran really well against Atlanta, which was I believe their last win. And they haven't really tried to run the ball aside from today after that. And now they try to run the ball, and they came close to winning this game. Again, set the tempo. Get out there. You have a young rookie quarterback, not a great receiving core. Run the ball. It's old school. It's boring. It's not the sexy thing to do. But when you're in a situation like the Eagles are right now, for these next 2 weeks, run the ball. I'm not saying, get away from the pass, but you know what? Sometimes when you run the ball, that opens things up for the pass, even with a bad receiving core. So why it's like it's so maddening. It's like you see the success they had today. It's like, what, Doug? What are you doing? Why are you not trying to run the ball in these other games? It's like, and I know they're behind, in some of these games, and that's part of it. But realistically, this is still a pretty good run blocking offensive line, even with the injuries, and they showed it today against the league's number one run defense. It really just makes you shake your head and go, what in the world are they doing these other games then? And I know today also there was the return of Ryan Matthews, and maybe that's part of it. You're without your number one running back for a number of weeks. But it's like, damn, man. See? Isn't this easy? Just try it. Just try it. It's like when you're a kid, you don't want to eat vegetables. It's like, well, just try it. Maybe you learn to like it. And maybe not. I still can't eat Brussels sprouts. But it is maddening, to watch this. Since it's like, and you think back to some of these close games that the Eagles lost, and it's like, if only they just could have ran the ball a little more in these games, maybe it could have been wins. I don't know. Just a thought. I know it's disappointing, and going through seasons like this are tough. This is where it tests you the most. But we have to understand and realize that it's a rebuilding year. This is the start of the rebuilding process for this team. Chip Kelly did a lot of bad things. A lot of bad things. And this is kind of cleaning up his mess. And it's going to take a couple years to do it. I've said this before. I'll say it again. This is like a 2-3 year project to try to correct. It's not going to be easy, to watch. I do believe in Carson Wentz. I do believe he can be the franchise. He is the franchise quarterback of this team. I just think they need to get him some more weapons. I know there are people that just hate on him and, whatever. But they need to get him weapons. And I think at that time, then we'll know, okay, do we have something, or was it just is he just another guy? And I know you can say all you want, well, quarterbacks that don't have weapons, yeah, but they have something. I mean, Tom Brady, for as great as he is, he's always had something. He's always had some weapon to throw the ball to. I know now um, the cupboard's a little bare with the absence of Gronk, but he still has Edelman to throw to and Bennett, and some of these other players that kind of make up for it. And I'm not saying I'm not trying to belittle what he's done, but we also have to remember he's been in the league how many years now? And even when he was young, I mean, they had a great defense those years in New England when they were, in his early years there. They definitely had a great defense. Future Hall of Famers on that defense. So I think that certainly helps too. But back to the Eagles. Listen, this is going to be a couple years that we just have to put up with here. They have to get this right. And like I said before, and I'll say it again, they have to hit in the draft. This is a very important draft coming up. The next draft, off season's draft is going to be very important. They have got to hit on these next two to three drafts. They got to get offensive linemen. They got to get corners. They do. They have to get an outside linebacker. They have to get. It'd be nice if they can get maybe another back. Another running back. Maybe wide receiver, though. I'm a little nervous about them drafting the wide receivers after the last few. I think Matthews is okay. I'd much rather see him as a slot receiver than an outside receiver. But honestly, I do. I kind of cringe, with them drafting receivers. I mean, the last time they hit on wide receivers was Deshaun Jackson and Jeremy Maclin. That's a long time ago. They really haven't hit. I mean, Jordan Matthews, I think that, the jury's still out on a little bit. I think he's probably been their best receiver they've drafted since. But it's, I do kind of cringe with them drafting receivers. But, they do. They gotta hit on these drafts. They have got to hit on these drafts. It's not just about free agency. It's about hitting on the drafts the next few years. Because they are going to be a bit handcuffed financially as far as going out and making big pushes for free agents. They probably won't be able to. They spent a lot of money on players this offseason to retain. And it's going to be tough for them to be a big player in free agency for at least the next year or two. That being said, though, I'd love to see them go get Deshaun Jackson back here and another receiver, via free agency. And maybe if they can get some help in other areas, that would be good. But there's not going to be any big-time splashes, I would imagine, this offseason as far as free agency goes. So it means even more they have to hit on the draft. Have to. It's an absolute must. And we'll see. Going forward, that's all we have is hope. People tell me all the time, oh, you're never going to see this, you're never going to see that. I mean, I like to remind them, well, there is never a never in sports. I mean, for people to think that there are certain teams that will never win no matter what, you're just being foolish. Because I saw the Phillies, a team that was the worst team in baseball in the late 90s, in the early 2000s. I mean, we know they're down now, but my God. Those Phillies teams from the late 90s, after they traded Schilling and Rowland and all those guys, those Phillies teams were some of the worst I've ever seen. And I think you can probably compare them to some of the worst teams in the history of baseball. And they went from that to winning a World Series and to playing in another one. They're giving us 5 years of dominance after that. Why? Because they hit in the draft. Right? They were able to get Utley and Hamels and Rollins and, yes, Burrell earlier, but Rollins and Howard, of course, and they hit on the Rule 5. Shane Victorino was a Rule 5. They brought in Jason Worth as a young player, and they built a team that was another World Series win or two away from being a dynasty. And that's an example of where you have to hit in the draft. You have to do well. If you're going to be bad for a number of years and you're going to have those picks, you got to hit on them. And I think right now you see the Phillies are starting to replenish that farm system, and they're starting to get some talent there, some real talent. And they're example A of, well, if you were to tell me back in, let's say, 1999 that I'm going to see the Phillies win a world championship in my lifetime, I would have just shrugged that off and said, what are you, nuts? Did you see this team? But they did. And they did it by building within the system. And yeah, they brought in some free agencies. They made the right move at manager. They made the right move with some of their other, bench coaches and whatnot. They did a good job. They put that team together, and they went on to have some great success. I mean, saw a World Series, saw them get to another one, saw a no-hitter, saw a perfect game, right? The playoff no-hitter by Roy Halladay, saw a 100-plus win season. All this in the span of 5 seasons after just years and years of absolute dreck. And then you saw them start getting better, and you saw them win. I still have confetti from that parade. So for people to tell me, you're never going to see the Eagles, dude, go away. I saw the Red Sox and the Cubs win championships. Okay, so I know that there isn't like this team that can never win. It might take a while. It might be a little more difficult in some stances, but yeah, eventually they do. It's law of averages. The teams that are great eventually go down. The teams that are down eventually go up. It is what it is. And people can tell me all they want. I'm please, in one ear, out the other. I don't even worry about you people. It's disappointing, though. I mean, going through seasons like this last year, it's tough. I mean, this is what they test you. And our local teams love to test us. It is hard to be a fan of these franchises. It's not easy. A lot of people, to the point that a lot of people in this area gave up a long time ago and went on to become fans of other teams. And, hey, to each his own. That's their prerogative. They did what they wanted to do. But for me, I know. I mean, I grew up with these teams. I love these teams. I'll always be a fan. And, doing this series week to week, it's one of the things, in a way, and it's tough to say this, but in a way, I'm glad I started when I did, when they're down, and show all who wanted to watch these videos what it is to be a fan of a team that, is letting me down, is letting our fan base down, and hopefully, within some seasons, I can make some videos after some wins. And when we're getting good again, when the Eagles are good again and they're starting to roll again, you can go through the roller coaster of emotions. And, that's one of the things about making this series. And, that's one of the things I hope people can see this. Maybe, I don't know, maybe if you see this video like 3-4 years from now, when the Eagles are doing good and, things are going well, you can see where we came from, to get to where we want to be. It's a ride, and as much as we're there when they're winning, you got to be there when you're going through tough seasons. We give our opinions. We want things, change in certain areas. Hopefully they will. Hopefully some of these young players will grow into being great players in the league. We don't know. We don't have that crystal ball in front of us. But I do think it's kind of cool that I'm doing this series now when the team's down. So that when they get to that point, you can kind of ride that roller coaster with, season after season. And when they get to that pinnacle, you can see where I was back in 2016 to get to that point. It's a ride, and being a sports fan of any team, it's a ride. I mean, you are put through a lot being a fan of a team. Really, for the Eagles, they. Yeah, it's not easy. It really isn't, but I wouldn't want to be a fan of any other team. I'm honest to say that. I mean that 100%. I give it to you guys 100% every week, and I'm being 100% with this. I mean, it would be easier to be a fan of another team, but I don't want to do that. I'm not going to be that person. I'm proud of where I live. I'm proud of these, being a fan of these teams, even though they test me a lot. I don't want it any other way. I just don't. I'm proud of where I'm from. It is what it is. I'm a Philadelphia Eagles fan. I've been one since 1993, and I'll be one until the day I my time has come to an end. I hope between now and then I can see a Super Bowl. God knows I've earned it. As much as all of us in Eagle Nation have earned it. But I will root for this team every week, no matter what the record is, because when you're a fan, that's what you got to do. And like I said, fans short for fanatics. That's what it is. And if you're going to be there for the good years, you better damn well be there for the bad years. There is no in between. All right, well, I've rambled on here for over 25 minutes. Another tough one today. Eagles go down to the Baltimore Ravens. 27-26, I believe, was the final. Eagles go for 2 at the end. Don't get it. But you know what? They showed a lot of fight to come back in that game. And, what can you do? They just don't have the talent right now. They just don't. It's unfortunate, but it's just that's the reality of it. Until they do, they're going to be seeing a lot more of these type of games. But I'm always going to film these vids, so be sure you check out every week after the game. You're always going to see me. I don't run and hide after losses. You see me win or lose, and that's part of the point of this series I'm doing. Years ago, I wanted to do sports talk radio, and I never really got into that, partly because I had the job, I still do, working with the local water company. I've been with the company going on almost 19 years, my goodness. So I never quite got into the sports talk. I never really, got into something that I had thought about doing, because I already had a steady job, and I wasn't going to leave it, to do something else. And the great thing about YouTube is it kind of gives everyone the opportunity to come on and make these videos about, whatever you want to make a video about. In this case, it's about being an Eagles fan. Or my jersey collecting, what I do. And I'm really happy for that. It's a great outlet. Anybody can do this. You don't have to be a professional. Anyone can make a video on YouTube, can make a channel and put videos out there for being a fan or collector or whatever life you have. And I'm thankful for that. This kind of gives me that opportunity to live something that I always kind of wanted to do. It's hard when we're having losing seasons to talk about, but it's part of it. I mean, if you do sports talk radio, you just going to do it when they're winning? No, you got to be there, talking about when they win or lose with all the sports. So I'm glad at least I have this outlet. I hope people enjoy it. I know sometimes I just ramble on like I'm doing now, but this is something I love, and I couldn't do this as a profession. But I can certainly do this on YouTube, and I thank all of you for watching my vids every week. It means something to me that, people do, get something out of it. Even the people who, the local Dallas fans who like to write me too. It is what it is. I mean, it goes with the territory. I've dealt with a lot of local Dallas fans in my time, and I'll deal with a lot more. But you guys aren't. Hey, this is me. I'm not going to be any fan of any. This is who I am. I'm an Eagles fan. I don't run from that. I'm not afraid to say it. This is the team that I love, and you know what? The good times will come back. Teams only stay down for so long before they get back up. So right now we have to go through some down years, but I believe they will get back up. So yeah. So anyhow, just gotta take the lumps now. That's the way it is. That's the way it is. Anyhow, thank you all for watching. I do want to wish you all a very happy holiday season. Maybe even to the Dallas fans out there. Hopefully it's a wonderful Christmas or Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever you choose to celebrate. Whatever you do celebrate, have a great and festive holiday season. I guess the next video you'll see me is next week after Christmas, after the Eagles Giants game, and then of course we have one more game, which will be January 1st of 2017, home against Dallas. Maybe, just maybe, they'll win that one. Come on, give us something. Let's go out with a win against Dallas. How about that? All right, everyone, take care. As always, go Birds. It's tough, but come on. Keep competing these next 2 weeks. You know what? They're at home. You know, just you know what, just keep competing. They've done that the last 2 weeks. At least they're not laying down for teams. I'm glad to see that at least. They just don't have the talent to close these games out, but um, I want to see them keep competing the next 2 weeks certainly. All right, Eagles Nation. I'll see you on the next one. Happy holidays, everyone, and take care.